we're kicking off with AEW Collision, as rather than a series of quick bi-state promos like usual, the show kicked off with Bryan Danielson's entrance for his match against Claudio Castagnoli. After a sportsmanlike handshake, the match started with a technical exchange of takedowns, submissions, and attempted pins, with the pair holding back on strikes until later on. Eventually, Danielson nailed Claudio with a stiff kick, and the Swiss wrestler responded with an uppercut that caught his BCC ally by surprise, and Castagnoli went even further. He showed some frustration when he resorted to poking Danielson in his good eye before attempting a pin, and to the surprise of nobody, this was an excellent match. Two of the most gifted wrestlers of their generation, these two brought out the best in each other, and the way they worked made it clear victory was important to both men. The pair never felt like adversaries, as a testament to how well the BCC has worked as a group, and even when Castagnoli took the low road, it felt like it was out of desperation, not animosity. With the clock ticking, both men tried some huge moves to take each other out, with Castagnoli locking in a sharpshooter with a minute to go, but Bryan broke free. The American Dragon hit Castagnoli with a big uppercut, but time ran out before he could make the cover, ending this match in a time limit draw. This decision allows Danielson to advance to the finals of the Blue League. They shook hands and hugged to a round of applause when it was over. Back in May 2022, Sasha Banks walked out of WWE alongside Naomi, but recently there have been questions about the future of Mercedes Mone. With Mone no longer under contract with New Japan, many are wondering whether a WWE return could happen, and the boss may be teasing a comeback. On Instagram, Mone shared photos of herself as a Funko Pop, and given that these pops all feature the Sasha Banks name and WWE logo, some have seen this as a tease of a return. While there have been talks of Mone joining AEW, there is no longer a working plan to sign her, and it's been reported that Mone wants more than what Charlotte received in her new WWE deal. Mercedes Mone left WWE on bad terms, but now it's Triple H who oversees talent relations, and would you like to see Sasha Banks return to WWE? And if so, who should she face first? More from Collision, and with this week's show being in San Antonio, it's fitting that Thunder Rosa made her in-ring return in her hometown. For her tag match against Sky Blue and Julia Hart, Rosa arrived in a lowrider to team with Abaddon, ahead of Abaddon's TBS title opportunity at World's End against Hart. Thunder Rosa secured the victory for her team with a Tijuana bomb on Sky Blue, making her return to the AEW Women's Division a successful one. This was Rosa's first match in over a year, and plenty has changed in AEW since she last competed, and we'll have to see what's next for her after this monumental comeback. During this week's show, House of Black were in the ring and they issued a challenge to FTR, who immediately made it clear they accept the challenge. This match will happen at next week's AEW World's End event, in the first time these teams have faced off in a normal tag team match, and it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. This week's AEW Collision featured some of the top names under contract with Tony Khan, but there was a very notable name backstage at the show. Bodyslam.net reports that New Japan's Chase Owens was backstage, but there's no confirmation if the Bullet Club member was there on business or just visiting friends at the event. Owens is currently scheduled for Wrestle Kingdom 18 and New Japan's New Year's Dash shows, so he is keeping busy, but he was able to find time in his busy schedule to make it to this week's Collision. It was at last year's Forbidden Door that Katsuyori Shibata made his AEW debut by helping Orange Cassidy, who he would challenge for the All-Atlantic title later that year. At this year's Super Card of Honor, Shibata won the ROH Pure title, a championship he'd hold until last month, and now fans can expect to see him in AEW for a long time. On Twitter, Tony Khan confirmed Shibata has been signed and shared a letter from Shibata in which he spoke about how wonderful his AEW run has been, and we'll have to see what's next now the Japanese star is all elite. As of late, several prominent backstage names have decided to leave AEW, and now the company's chief marketing and merchandising officer is set to finish up very soon. Sean Ross Sapp and Raj Giri have confirmed that Dana Massey, who had been in that role since the very start of AEW, will be finishing with AEW in quite the notable loss for the promotion. After all, Massey isn't just the chief marketing and merchandising officer, but she's also Matt Jackson's wife, and she isn't the only person set to leave. Raphael Morphy, AEW's Vice President of Live Events and Touring, is expected to leave the company at the end of the year, as 2024 will certainly see a much different AEW, at least behind the scenes. Back to Collision in this week's show didn't feature much of a festive show outside of some festive hats, but delivered some excellent in-ring action. Danielson and Castagnoli stole the show from the start, while the other Continental Classic matches helped show why this tournament has been great for AEW. Daniel Garcia scoring an upset win was a great moment, as was the promo from Christian Cage, and the return of Thunder Rosa was a welcome sight. There were no weak segments or matches on this show, which is a rarity in pro wrestling, and set the tone for World's End. On an episode of Busted Open Radio, Scott D'Amore teased a massive signing for TNA Wrestling, and we know that this mystery person will make their presence felt at Hard to Kill 2024. It's often the case that big signings like the one D'Amore is teasing get leaked online, spoiling the surprise, but that isn't the case this time around. Fightful Select reports none of their sources behind the scenes has any knowledge about who the signing is, only that it's been called a big signing. While some have called this signing the biggest in TNA history, Fightful explained that this isn't the case, and while they're not the biggest ever, it's still a pretty big get for TNA. It appears that fans will just have to wait and see who ends up being this major signing, as those in TNA are working very hard to keep plans under wraps. On December 31st, it'll have been 1 year since Goldberg's contract with WWE expired, and while he's spoken at length about having one more match, we're yet to see him back in the ring. It's been rumored for some time that Goldberg could show up in AEW for this final run, as the All Elite company would give him a huge platform, but if that's the plan, it's been a slow process so far. PW Insider was asked about Goldberg's potential debut in AEW during a Q&A, and said that while Tony Khan has spoken positively on Goldberg, there's no plans at this time to bring him in. One major player in all of this is Barry Bloom, who is Goldberg's agent and has represented several big names in talks with AEW, including the Elite. It was Bloom who secured huge deals that'll keep the Elite around for years to come, and while he could one day bring Goldberg to AEW, there's nothing in the works as of right now. With WrestleMania 40 set to take place in Philadelphia, many are expecting an ECW vibe to the week's festivities, and one name synonymous with Extreme is Rob Van Dam. Earlier this year, RVD claimed an appearance at WrestleMania may have been canceled due to him appearing on AEW TV, but that won't keep him away from the city of brotherly love. Whether RVD is at Mania or not, he confirmed on Marty Jannetty's podcast that he'll be at WrestleCon, as RVD is coming to Philly no matter what WWE has allegedly done. Since coming to the main roster, Rhea Ripley has proven herself as a force to be reckoned with, and it's not just the women's division that has felt the Eradicator's wrath. Ripley has repeatedly shown her strength against the men of Monday Night Raw, much like Chyna, who Ripley has often been compared to in the past. Speaking to the Western Australian newspaper, Ripley spoke about the comparisons to the Ninth Wonder of the World and how her competing with men may have affected the women. She said, "I don't think getting compared to Chyna is a bad thing at all. I think it's amazing. I'm actually very proud of that fact. The only problem that I'm having at the moment is that I've done all these amazing things with men that have been so good to me and let me do these things. While I was doing that, the women's division was suffering a little bit and not getting built the right way. It was at a weird time where things weren't certain and things were changing constantly, so the women's division suffered a little bit, and now we're trying to build it back up. Obviously, we have like our Becky Lynches, we have Nia Jax, we have our Charlotte Flairs, our Asukas, all of that, but it's time to make some new stars as well, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make new names and get the women's division rocking and rolling. So there's lots of great challenges, but for me, I love doing everything. I love beating the men up, I love beating the women up. It makes me different, it makes me stand out, and it's a lot of fun." Ripley has beaten every woman put in her way, and while that's great for her career, there have been complaints by some fans that WWE has essentially buried their entire division in favor of Ripley. At this time, it is unclear who will dethrone Rhea, if WWE has a person in mind at this time at all, and what do you make of her comments? Let us know in our comments section down below. And we're ending today with Charlotte Flair, who may be out of action with an injury, but that won't stop her from supporting her husband. This week, Andrade El Idolo competed at a CMLL event, and Charlotte could be seen at ringside cheering her man on. In video making the rounds online, Charlotte was on crutches and struggled to get out of her seat, but ended up having a great view of the show and the trios match Andrade was a part of. Charlotte is expected to miss 9 months after she has surgery next month, meaning it'll likely be October 2024 before she returns, and we are wishing her all the best at this time.